They weren't gangsters. They weren't warlords. One was a clean-cut physicist, the other a quiet coder from Zimbabwe. But behind their screens, they built two of the most dangerous criminal empires the digital world has ever seen. This isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about how far people will go when they think no one's watching. Before we move on to the next part, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening. Who's more dangerous, the idealist with a keyboard or the killer with a code? Ross William Ulbricht was a physics graduate from Texas who dreamed of changing the world. Paul Le Roux was a South African-born coder who once wrote software to protect internet privacy. Both were brilliant, educated, and deeply immersed in the world of technology. But their paths led into the shadows, where their intelligence became tools for something far more sinister. Ulbricht created Silk Road, an underground marketplace hidden on the dark web. Through it, users could buy anything from LSD to cocaine, all paid in Bitcoin, shipped anonymously through the mail. In just 2 years, Silk Road had processed over 1.2 million transactions and moved more than $213 million in drugs and illegal goods. Ulbricht wasn't hiding in some jungle bunker. He was in coffee shops and libraries, working off his laptop, convinced that what he was doing wasn't crime, but revolution. He wasn't selling drugs himself, but he enabled a network that made access easier than ever before. Le Roux didn't stop at creating software. He built an empire, starting with online pharmacies that shipped addictive opioids across the US without prescriptions. He expanded into methamphetamine production in the Philippines, gold smuggling in Africa, arms deals in Eastern Europe, and even ran a network of contract killers. He operated across multiple continents, used offshore shell companies to launder hundreds of millions, and is confirmed to have ordered at least 7 murders. Le Roux wasn't working for a cause. He worked for himself and left no loose ends. On the surface, Ulbricht was the quiet libertarian, idealistic, non-violent, and soft-spoken. Le Roux was the ghost, a violent, calculating mastermind who built a criminal infrastructure that outlived him. But peel back the layers, and a more unsettling picture emerges. Both men believed they were untouchable. Both built worlds where laws didn't apply. Both, in their own ways, rewrote what it meant to be a criminal in the digital age. 2 minds, 2 crimes, 2 kinds of power. The question is no longer who they were, but what they reveal about us. Who would you fear more, the man who believes he's saving the world, or the one who knows he's destroying it? Ross Ulbricht was born in 1984 in Austin, Texas. He was the kind of student teachers remembered. Bright, polite, deeply curious. He studied physics, then engineering, and later dabbled in economics and philosophy. His worldview was shaped by libertarian thinkers like Ludwig von Mises and Murray Rothbard, men who preached against the grip of government and for the sanctity of individual freedom. Ulbricht wasn't a criminal in the traditional sense. He had no record, no violent past, no known history of manipulation. What he had was belief, unyielding belief that the world should be freer and that the internet could be the place to make it happen. That belief led to the birth of Silk Road, a digital marketplace that operated through the Tor network, masking user identities, and relied on Bitcoin for transactions. The idea was simple: a free market where people could buy and sell anything without state interference. Drugs were the most popular category, but listings also included fake documents, hacking tools, and occasionally weapons. Ulbricht operated under the alias Dread Pirate Roberts, a nod to a fictional character passed down between people, a myth more than a man. But Ulbricht was no myth. He managed listings, solved disputes, handled security, and ran the site for over 2 years. He believed that Silk Road reduced violence by taking drug sales off the street and onto the screen, but that belief slowly gave way to contradictions. When he suspected a rogue staff member might expose the site, Ulbricht didn't just fire him, he allegedly tried to have him killed. Though the hit was never carried out, and there's no evidence Ulbricht ever succeeded in ordering a murder, the intention was real. The line between idealism and criminal intent had blurred, and Ulbricht had crossed it. Paul Le Roux's origin story is murkier. Born in 1972 in then Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, he was adopted and raised in South Africa. He showed early signs of genius, teaching himself to code in his teens. In the late 1990s, he developed E4M, a free open-source disk encryption program. It was a tool designed to protect privacy, especially in a world increasingly surveilled by governments and corporations. At first, he seemed like another tech rebel, trying to give users control over their data. But what he built next had little to do with user rights, and everything to do with profit and control. Le Roux saw the gaps in international regulation and exploited them ruthlessly. He launched online pharmacies that sold prescription drugs, particularly opioids like tramadol, to American buyers without any medical oversight. The profits poured in. From there, he expanded into meth labs in Southeast Asia, smuggling routes in Brazil, gun shipments in Somalia, and private security forces in the Philippines. He didn't just run a business, he ran a criminal conglomerate. His employees ranged from coders and pharmacists to hired killers and former soldiers. While Ulbricht ran Silk Road largely alone, hidden behind a screen, Le Roux built a command center. He tracked employees, threatened defectors, and kept execution squads on standby. He rarely left a digital trace, using encrypted communication and layers of fake identities. He ran companies that didn't exist, held meetings that weren't recorded, and carried passports under names that weren't his. Where Ulbricht hoped his system would self-regulate through trust, Le Roux trusted no one and ruled through fear. Both men were eventually caught. Ulbricht made a critical error. Early in Silk Road's creation, he posted under his real name in an online forum asking for help with Tor and Bitcoin integration. That one breadcrumb was enough for the FBI to start piecing things together. In October 2013, agents arrested him at a public library in San Francisco, catching him with his laptop open and logged in as Dread Pirate Roberts. His trial was swift. In 2015, he was sentenced to 2 life terms plus 40 years, without the possibility of parole. Le Roux's fall was less cinematic, but far more complex. By 2012, the DEA had built a case against him. They lured him to Liberia under the pretense of a business deal and arrested him there. Unlike Ulbricht, Le Roux cooperated. He agreed to become an informant, wearing a wire, setting up former associates, and feeding the US government intel on other global operations. In exchange, prosecutors delayed his sentencing for nearly a decade. In 2020, he was sentenced to 25 years, relatively light considering his crimes, due to the extraordinary assistance he provided. The damage both men caused is hard to quantify. Silk Road facilitated the sale of drugs that led to overdoses and addictions, though Ulbricht never directly touched a shipment. Le Roux's empire, on the other hand, had blood on its hands. Confirmed killings, thousands of lives affected by synthetic drugs, and weapons funneled into conflict zones. Where one built a digital market, the other built a transnat. In the end, the difference wasn't just in the crimes they committed, it was in how they understood power. Ross Ulbricht believed in ideas. He thought he could create a system that ran itself, guided by libertarian ethics and the invisible hand of the market. He saw himself not as a criminal, but as a visionary, a digital age philosopher building a freer society. But as Silk Road grew, so did the darkness it hosted. Heroin, ecstasy, forged documents, even hacking services flourished under the veil of anonymity. Ulbricht believed he had created something revolutionary, but what he really did was open the floodgates, and once that door was open, there was no going back. Paul Le Roux never claimed to be anything other than what he was, a man in control. He didn't need ideology. His empire was fueled by greed, paranoia, and absolute dominance. He paid people to kill. He arranged shipments of meth from North Korea. He sold encryption to the public, then used similar tools to hide the trail of his own violence. His operations spanned over a dozen countries, involved dozens of shell companies, and generated hundreds of millions of dollars. His name, for years, was barely known, even to law enforcement. When Ulbricht was sentenced in 2015, Judge Catherine Forrest made it clear the punishment was meant to send a message. 2 life sentences, plus 40 years. No chance of parole. She called him a criminal who operated in the shadows of the internet, who needed to be stopped not just for what he did, but for what others might be inspired to do after him. Le Roux, by contrast, used his knowledge as leverage. He handed over names, wore a wire, and helped bring down parts of his own empire. In 2020, after years of sealed testimony and cooperation, he was sentenced to 25 years, a stark difference in outcome. The comparison is striking. Ulbricht, who never pulled a trigger, spends the rest of his life behind bars. Le Roux, who orchestrated murders and flooded countries with addictive substances, may one day walk free. It challenges our assumptions about justice. Is a man more dangerous because of what he did or because of what he knows? Is remorse less important than usefulness? In the courtroom, the law claims to treat all equally. But in these 2 stories, equality seems like a distant concept. Their cases have been studied not just by lawyers and criminologists, but also by cybercrime experts, policymakers, and cultural critics. Silk Road was one of the first major criminal marketplaces on the dark web, a template for countless others. After Ulbricht's arrest, at least 50 clones of the site appeared within a year. Le Roux's legacy, on the other hand, is one of chilling efficiency. His model didn't inspire, it intimidated. It showed that a single individual with enough code and no conscience could mimic the structure of a nation-state's criminal apparatus. Comparisons to other figures of the era help put their actions in scale. Pablo Escobar ran his empire with guns and bribes. Ulbricht used Tor and Bitcoin. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo relied on corrupt officials and cartels. Le Roux used encrypted emails and shell companies. The methods evolved, but the core goal remained the same. Build something so complex, so decentralized, that it could survive any one man's downfall. But both failed, because no system, no matter how well coded, no matter how deeply hidden, can completely eliminate human error. Ulbricht's mistake was arrogance. He thought he could remain anonymous forever, and that his digital fingerprints would vanish into the ether. Le Roux's downfall was overconfidence, trusting the wrong people, underestimating the patience of law enforcement. And yet, what may unsettle us most is that for years both men succeeded, not in theory, but in measurable impact. Ulbricht moved over $200 million in drugs through Silk Road. Le Roux's pharmacy empire generated hundreds of millions before he even began trafficking meth. These are not just stories of crime. They are cautionary tales about modern power, about how technology doesn't just enable crime, it transforms it, makes it scalable, global, invisible, and in the wrong hands, unstoppable. Yet both men were stopped, not by code or ideals, but by the same human flaws that fuel so many criminal downfalls: pride, paranoia, and the illusion of control. What does it say about us that one man became a martyr to internet libertarians, while the other fades into obscurity despite far greater violence? What does it mean that a keyboard can wield the same power as a gun? These aren't just questions about crime. They're questions about the world we've built and the people we've allowed to shape it. Ross Ulbricht is serving life without parole, locked away for building a marketplace he thought would change the world. Paul Le Roux, the silent mastermind behind murders and meth shipments, might one day walk free. Two men, two destinies, same digital battlefield. If this story made you rethink what danger looks like in the 21st century, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We're diving even deeper into the minds of modern criminals. And here's the question: should justice treat the idealist and the killer the same, if both built systems that ruined lives? Or is intent everything? Let us know in the comments.